So the question is, should you buy the iPhone 15 Plus or the iPhone 15 Pro Max? If you're looking to pick up a larger iPhone, but you're kind of on the fence between these two, this is the video for you. Now, you might be thinking, well, the price point is definitely a savings on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which it is. You know, the 13 Pro Max is going for right around that $480 to around $600, maybe $650 price, depending on the storage. Definitely a lot cheaper than when this phone first came out. But the 15 Plus is also a latest iPhone with a dynamic island and cheaper than that of the latest Pro. So from a price perspective, which is the better deal? That's a very tough one. We're going to find that out by the end of this video, so stay tuned. We're going to begin by talking about the body and the build. So you want to know which one has the better body and the build? Well, for me, I feel like practically speaking, the 15 Plus would be my pick, mostly because the edges are less sharp. It's a lighter phone, and it just feels sleeker and easier to hold day to day. It's not as heavy. But if I was talking from a pure durability, a pure premium standpoint, I have to give it to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So that's how you got to decide. If you want a more premium build, but you also want a, just a phone that feels more durable, but you can deal with a little bit more weight, pick the 13 Pro Max. If you really don't like this notch and you want dynamic island, save up an extra $100 or $200 and go with the 14 Pro Max. It's right in between these two. It has a dynamic island, but the older feel of the 13 Pro Max. So do consider that. But if you're like, I don't want a heavy phone, I don't care about the looks, I'm putting a case on it anyway, and that case is going to weigh it down more, the iPhone 15 Plus is your pick for sure. And if you are a type of person who doesn't want to use a case and you want a lightweight, big phone, you'll love the iPhone 15 Plus. You'll want to pick it in that respect. So that's how you'll choose. Whichever one of those statements you resonated with more, that's going to be the phone that'll please you and appease to you more. Now, design-wise, which one to buy here? Well, if you want a phone that looks like you paid more for it in the design, I still think the 13 Pro Max has that over the iPhone 15 Plus, especially if you rock this without a case and people could see, or even you could see just kind of like the shiny edges, the triple camera. Everyone's going to know that's the more premium phone. However, on the front, if you see it from the front, everyone's going to know that's a 15 because of the dynamic island or one of the newer iPhones. So from the back, this one looks cheaper, but from the front, it looks newer. This one from the front looks older, but from the back, it looks more premium. So you kind of got to decide, what do you like more in the design? You like the dynamic island with these slightly thinner bezels, or you don't care about the notch, you don't care for the dynamic island, you want the more premium build. In that respect, when you're choosing between these two, you'll want the 13 Pro Max. So the thing that's difficult about these two in comparison is that they kind of trade, different things for each other. Like you get dynamic island, like we talked about, and you get the premium build here. So, I feel like the 14 Pro Max between these two is probably the sweet spot if you're having difficulties deciding between these two, but that does cost more than the 13 Pro Max. And that saga might continue here when we come over to the display. Now, when I was talking about how they trade different things for each other, now, while they're very similar, this one omits the 120 hertz. Now, I have to tell you, I did a video a while ago where I talked about why I switched to this phone for 30 days, and I was absolutely loving it. And I actually found in my experience that you kind of do forget about it. Now, later on, I still made some mentions in some recent reviews that I think it's ridiculous there's no 120 hertz, and I feel that way. At the same time, you can get used to it. Once I see 120 hertz again, I start to go back to thinking, why is there not a 120 hertz on here? However, I do think it shouldn't be the main deciding factor, especially if you really, really like this phone right here, because it still has more brightness than this phone over here. This goes up to 2000 nits peak outdoors. So it actually matches the 15 Pro Max, which is brighter than this phone. It has the same 1000 nits. In addition to that, it has a higher density of 460 pixels per inch. So the 15 Plus is actually, it's going to be the sharper and brighter phone overall. So definitely consider So definitely go ahead and consider this phone if you care about a great display, but you also want dynamic island and you want sharper and brighter, but you don't care about 120 hertz. Now, the thing is that they're both the same size panel. And on the 13 Pro Max, if you're like, dude, I don't care that that phone's slightly brighter, I gotta have the 120 hertz, then this is gonna be the phone for you here. Still an OLED, still incredibly beautiful and bright here for the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Still takes amazing photos, as you can see. The notch definitely, I think, kind of blends out more. I think Dynamic Island is more obvious, but it's still obvious with the notch as well. But you really just kind of feel that liquid smooth ProMotion day to day on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and it just leads to a smoother feel day to day. Like, it just feels like I'm rolling my finger across butter. Like, it feels super liquidy smooth. Even now, even though this phone came out a few years back, it still feels better than scrolling on the iPhone 15 Plus. So if you scroll a lot, you'll probably enjoy 13 Pro Max more, and I think it'll be the better option. Now, when it comes to the software, we have iOS 17.4.1 on both phones. But keep in mind that 17.4.1 runs, pretty amazing on most of them. The actual experience only changes between these two in two areas. Number one, there is software related to the Dynamic Island. So if you do get the 15 Plus, you will have certain apps that are developed to work with Dynamic Island, including the Apple TV, apps like Grubhub, Uber Eats, Lyft, Uber, stuff like this. They actually work with Dynamic Island. So there's some cool touches to that are enhanced. Also the timers, which is not a big deal. But over here also you'll find a couple different settings here in the camera department. So if we scroll down here to camera, and then we scroll over here to camera, we'll take a look if I could find it. Let's see, right there. If we go to formats, there's this photo mode where you can capture 24 megapixel camera shots here, not on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but you don't have RAW on the 15 Plus. So if you want to take it a little bit more pro, there's probably a little bit more you can do with the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But the actual photo results come out at 24 megapixels, and you can crop in and get more zoom here on this camera here. So that's kind of where the software differs. Other than that, app libraries on board. You have several years of software support left on both. However, the 15 Plus being the A16 Bionic from the 14 Pro Max means you have longer support. So if you're paying a difference of only a couple $100, it's hard to justify getting the 13 Pro Max over the 15 Plus because of the longevity of software support, especially if you're going to be keeping the phone a long time. I'd pick the 15 Plus here. Now in the area of performance, obviously the 15 Plus is a more powerful phone here. Has an A16 Bionic versus an A15 Bionic. Now, yes, that's only a marginal difference in terms of the clock speed and the memory, but they both have 6 gigs of RAM. But there is a little bit of a boost in performance. And I don't care if it's 20%, 15%, even if it's tiny like that. If you're keeping your phone a long time, that makes a difference. However, I feel like it's offset by the fact that this has 60 hertz. So while this is boosted, I'm going back to the 60 hertz, the 13 Pro Max might not have that slight boost in performance from the A16. It still has the 120 hertz, which more than makes up for it. So some people actually use the 13 Pro Max, try out the 15 Plus and say, this phone doesn't feel as fast or smooth as my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm not getting that phone. And for that reason, I do think that the iPhone 13 Pro Max is going to be better for those people who really want to see a smoother looking iOS. However, if you're a sheer performance lover and you just want the most you can get for your money, and this is your budget, and you just want the most performance because you do a lot of gaming or you render out videos, I don't know if you do that much of that stuff, then you'll want the 15 Plus. Or you're like, I'm keeping my phone a long time, I want the fastest chip for the longest support, you'll want this one. So they're pretty close, but 15 Plus will be my pick if I cared about performance at the technical level. When it comes to battery life, these are pretty close. One of the things I really like about the 15 Plus is that this phone right here has incredible battery without, because it doesn't use the ProMotion. Without having that ProMotion, it allows it for incredible battery. I also like that when I put on the low power mode, there's no difference in the display. When you have a 13 Pro Max, you buy one of these or you buy a 14 or 15 Pro Max, but when you turn on low power mode, it disables the 120 hertz, and now you feel like you have this older, choppier look. It's not choppy, but you get what I'm saying, the 60 hertz look, because it does turn off the ProMotion. So there's no difference there, and you could save battery without feeling a difference in performance, where you feel it more on the 13 Pro Max. So what that means is that you don't want to turn on low power mode as much, and you will not save as much battery here. But the iPhone 13 Pro Max, while it first came out, had amazing battery. It still does. I don't feel like its battery life is as strong as the 15 Plus nowadays, but it was probably better before. But with these recent updates, it's pretty much the same. There's not a major difference. These phones are those type of phones where if you charge them all the way up, they're lasting 2 days on both of these. So these are some boss status phones in the battery life, both pretty large capacities and both very good in this department. I would actually say these are my two of my favorite battery life phones on all the iPhones that were ever made so far. These are two of the top ones right here, as well as the 14 Plus. So yeah, if you're deciding here, you're confused, don't be scared about the battery. Either way you go, you're winning in this department. I would just scratch this off the list because you're going to win either way, no matter what you pick. So there's a pretty big disparity in the charging area, though. We did switch over to the more universal USB-C, and this has the older Lightning. You can also see that matte black is much cleaner than this smudge fest over here on the 13 Pro Max. Keep in mind, the charging is not super fast on either of these phones, but the USB-C is a game changer. Reason why is everything is going this route. Most products use USB-C and will continue to do so for years to come. This is the universal compatibility standard now, and it's on cameras, it's on headphones, it's on iPads, MacBooks, iPhones now, Android phones, you name it, earbuds. It's across the industry. So I'm picking all day for the charging, the iPhone 15 Plus. For some people who have tons of Lightning accessories, this is going to be a good choice for your 13 Pro Max. And if you're like, I'm not investing in a bunch of USB-C products yet, and I'm not planning on doing that for a couple years, 13 Pro Max should be your pick here. All right, so you're deciding here and you see these dual cameras and you say, I don't know what to get. Should I get that triple stovetop camera on the 13 Pro Max? Or should I get that diagonal stovetop on the iPhone 15 Plus? And the truth of the matter is that I'm picking the 15 Plus, and I'll tell you why. So, you know, when you go into the camera here, we flip it around, they now allow you to crop in on that lens. This is a huge deal, and I got an Android man here and an iPhone video, that's fine. It's because having that ability to do that really has set this apart from previous iPhone 13, iPhone 14 models. Going 10 times is what people mostly need. 5 times was weak sauce, and then you have the ultra wide here as well. This camera has some of the later HDR footage, the later algorithms, the later processing, so it nearly matches a 15 Pro model, almost. And for that reason, going on the front here, a better front-facing camera, everything just turns out better in terms of results than the iPhone 13 Pro Max. However, the 13 Pro Max is the phone for you if you want a macro camera that has a built-in camera, a macro camera that automatically switches. It was the first iPhone to do this. Also, if we flip it around, it has a really good front-facing camera. And if you like a camera that doesn't require basically any camera knowledge, you know, the distance where it focuses is really good. It has a 3x zoom, which is pretty usable, and it goes even further in the zoom at 15. So if you want further zoom, this will be the better option. However, I just think these photos don't look as good, the final results, mostly due to the processing. They're not old and bad by no means. They still look freaking pro level and amazing. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted what I'm saying here. But I do think you're having 15 level results on the iPhone, like 15 Pro Max level results on the 15 Plus without having slightly more zoom. So I'm picking the 15 Plus because I think the camera that actually matters on here is the main sensors. They do enough for the average person. I think why not get the phone with the latest sensor technology, the latest of the latest. I think it's a better deal here on the 15 Plus. But only if you can sacrifice 5 extra zoom and you can go 10 instead of 15, and you're willing to sacrifice some of those pro features, which I don't think 99% of people, mainstream average consumers even use. The audio performance is actually louder as well. Coming out of these bottom firing speakers, the 13 Pro Max was one of the loudest iPhones I ever heard to date, but it got outdone by about 3 or 4 decibels on my iPhone 15 Plus. So the 15 Plus actually has an improvement in the speaker department. So if you make speakerphone calls, you want to listen to blasting your songs out of your phone, the 15 Plus wins in that department as well. It definitely wins. It's a little bit louder on my testing. So thumbs up to the 15 Plus. Pick that one for louder audio. Okay, so the next one is connectivity and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Both of them support up to Wi-Fi 6. So they're the same there. One very, very big difference is Bluetooth 5.3 on the 15 Plus, 5.0 on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So faster to connect to AirPods, and upcoming upgraded AirPods will be snappier. I also forgot to mention that you can connect a USB-C to the display port, so you can actually just easily showcase your iPhone on any monitor with a USB-C cable. That's a nice touch as well for the 15 Plus. In addition, you do have emergency SOS and satellite connectivity. So if you have an issue where, there's an emergency, you might have your life saved by the iPhone 15 Plus. That can be a major improvement for you. Yeah, that's about it. There's also technically, the same kind of like reception string. They both got 5G. I haven't noticed a major difference here. Colors wise, you have a Alpine green option, a space gray option. On this one, well, it's basically called graphite, gold, silver, Sierra blue. And the colors, besides the matte black, are not my favorite on the 15 Plus. They're kind of pastel-y looking, but the 15 Plus in matte black is just a stunner, in my opinion. So this one is absolutely gorgeous, but that's just my personal opinion. At the end of the day, wrapping this thing up here, resale value, the 15 Plus model probably won't hold its own as well as a Max, but if you get a good storage capacity, you should net yourself a decent return. Maxes always hold their value a little bit better, but because this is older, you'll probably still get less money anyway, because it's an older phone. Which should you buy? Well, whatever you kind of were resonating with more with here, this should have helped you. Just, when you watch the video, whatever you found yourself, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's more my style, that's gonna be the phone for you. If I had to choose right now, which would I choose? Honestly, if I was being totally honest with you, if I had this dilemma, I would not pick either of these. I would get a space black 14 Pro Max. Reason why is because it's the in-between option between both of these if you're confused. But if you were like, Nick, bro, that doesn't help me. I need to know which one you would pick between these two right here. If you told me like, Nick, bro, I don't, just tell me between these two. Don't confuse me. Just tell me which one you would pick between these two. It's really tough, but I would probably go with the 15 Plus. And the reason why is because I'll deal with the 60 Hertz for a while and I'll work hard or do whatever I got to do so I can upgrade to a Max. But at least I'm going to get the dynamic island. At least I'm going to get the latest cameras. And while I got to deal with 60 Hertz, at least I have the latest iPhone with more updates, better processor, and deal with 60 Hertz until I get my next one. That's how I would deal with that. And if you're like this person who's like, I don't care about 60 Hertz, then that doesn't even matter. Throw that comment out the window that I just said. But the 13 Pro Max is still a stunner as well. And if you pick this up and you find yourself resonating with this more, you cannot go wrong. This thing is gorgeous. Let's wrap it up here. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Any comments, questions, concerns, leave them down below. A lot of people have purchased these phones and they could help you out in the comments. So make sure you get your questions in down below. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well. And peace.